Hey everyone, welcome to episode 3 of the Mature Game Podcast. I'm your host Stephen Hanley, and joining me today is Jake
Hey guys.
and Alaric.
Hello, people.
On today's show, we're going to be talking about the delay for GTA 5, CD Projekt's interview with Rock Paper Shotgun, and Alaric's first impressions with Bioshock Infinite. So first up, start light with it. The delay on GTA.
I told you.
You told me, yeah. Okay, so I wasn't too sure that it was going to be delayed. I was hopeful it was going to be coming out spring, but Rockstar have recently announced that it is going to be until... When is it actually?
September 17th.
September.
September 17th. Okay. But now, I was thinking initially, like, would this be anything to be worried about? But the way it is with, especially with Rockstar, have been known for quality a lot of the time. So I was thinking, better to have a delayed product that has a good quality standard rather than something that's just thrown out to get meet the expectations of the public.
Yeah, I'll go with that. Definitely. I mean, there's this sort of attachment to delays in that, the fans are going to be pissed if we keep delaying and delaying and delaying. But I've always looked upon it as time for them to improve what could be generally, games are flawed when they're out of the gate anyway, if we're being honest. You look at a lot of games, immediately there's a problem, a patch needs to be sorted out for it, blah, blah, blah. So, I'm happy to wait for GTA 5. Because if we're being completely honest, it has set the bar for what we expect from a sandbox. I don't even know if GTA 5 can be classed as sandbox. I think it's in its own class at this point, its own genre.
Yeah, it goes beyond. But it's people will be expecting a really high standard from GTA, and I'm sure most people would see that, like, they want a release that's gonna be what they're expecting, basically. That won't be rushed out every year like some other titles.
The trailer looks fucking amazing, though.
It really does. The second one, now the first one, people were a bit skeptical, but the second one now really kind of hit home and showed that there was kind of the outlandish nature and, crazy stuff you would expect from a Grand Theft Auto is still going to be in place while mixing some of the more mature themes and good storytelling from Grand Theft Auto 4 as well.
Yeah.
So it has potential to be a very, very big release.
No, it's got to have some element of craziness to it, but I do prefer Saints Row 3 overall. I think for craziness, if you want to talk about gameplay craziness, story craziness, yeah, Grand Theft Auto definitely. They've got this.
Doesn't wonder now if that's going to be if there's going to be another Saints Row now. Actually, considering that they were the whole thing.
What with
deal with THQ
with our publisher of the year? You mean the ones who went under?
I'm convinced I have to touch it there.
Oh, well.
Touch it.
No, the Saints Row 3, Saints Row 4, rather, I'm sure it will find a new home because people have to recognize that thing will sell. It will sell big.
Yeah.
It will.
I did say,
and you can...
Saints Row 3 sales were good.
Yeah, and you can do what you want with it. It's not restrictive in the way... I think in some ways Grand Theft Auto is more difficult to make. If you're talking about a sequel, then Saints Row. Saints Row, you know exactly what your audience wants.
Yeah.
Sex toys that you smash shit up with, tanks that fly.
Wasn't expecting the sex toy to be one of the funnest things to be using in the game.
It's renowned.
Endgame fucking quality weapon right there.
Yes.
Taking on the last mission with it.
Yes, absolutely. Don't you know sex toys are the most powerful objects in games? Highest damage, largest radius.
So yeah, GTA delayed till September. So another topic we have is the CD Projekt interview on Rock Paper Shotgun. Now you guys are a bit more familiar on this topic than me, but basically there have been teases towards The Witcher 3 and talk about the engine it's going to be running on, both Cyberpunk and The Witcher 3, I think, is it?
Yeah, that's the plan. The Red Engine 3, I believe they've called it. It's meant to be able to bring a real open world experience to an RPG. As the developer said in the interview, quite often RPGs, they either get one right or the other, in the sense that it's either a great open world with crap quests or the other way around.
Yeah.
So they're hoping with this new engine they'll be able to do both. As for The Witcher 3, I mean, even when the Cyberpunk trailer came out, people were saying they seen pictures of this, that, and the other in the trailer. I'll just guesswork really, but I don't know. I think it's pretty foregone that we are going to get The Witcher 3. I just don't think it's going to be as soon as people think.
No, the Witcher 3 will definitely take its time, and they can afford to be honest, because they're not a massive studio, and they don't have the same kind of pressures on them to have this this cycle where they're constantly releasing new titles. But I think it's good that they've got this new engine together, and that they're going to be able to expand upon what we commonly conceive as the RPG format, and they're going to make it much more mainstream appealing, and hopefully from that we'll get a load of different strains of sub RPG cultures that will have their own unique brand to them. I mean, the Witcher games in general I think are quite unique, and I think if CD Projekt Red, if they could actually come up with a game series that was that unique and yet that popular, then I'm quite eager to see what they can offer in terms of game engines and other ideas for their gaming aspirations. It would be good.
Sorry, go on, Steve.
Sorry, I gotta say, Cyberpunk 2077 looks really interesting considering it's based on a very old game. Or is it a board game it's based off?
It is. It's they mentioned it was 20 or the pen and paper Cyberpunk 2020.
Yeah.
So yeah,
it'll be interesting to see what they do as well with this game, considering it's based off something like that.
I would love to see somebody really kind of hit the nail on the head when it came to a cyberpunk setting, because I know it is a really interesting theme, and I mean you've got Bioshock basically taking the steampunk idea to an extent, but if someone did it really well, I think it could actually be a really good RPG. It's very difficult to pull off properly without seeming cheesy or kind of overdone. So what we have next is right. Okay, so this is a very good one here. Alaric's experience with Bioshock Infinite.
Yes.
So recently, you actually got a chance to play the game, and
I did,
hands-on, and a couple of questions I want to ask you about it anyway. First off, what portion of the game did you get to demo?
From the very beginning. It's pretty much the build. It was just restricted in how far you could go, really.
Yeah.
So there was a good 2.5 to 3 hours in there. From the very beginning of the game. That was pretty much it. It was you played from the beginning and you went as far as you could before the game sort of faded to black in the middle of a fight, and you were left thinking, "Oh, is that it?"
So sort of what you would see from a trailer, almost similar to that.
No, though it was. You learn a lot more about Elizabeth, this female character that's in there. You learn more about Columbia and Comstock, the Prophet, and his plan. I mean, to me, it's fairly clear what certain things in this game are, that the big twists that happen. I mean, I think I'm pretty certain on what is what without spoiling anything. And the amount of content that you got to see, it was quite extensive. You had this massive opening sequence where you're dropped off next to a lighthouse, and you have that same sense of discovery through this lighthouse like you had in the original Bioshock, where your plane crashed next to one. And the character you're playing as, he's got a mouth, he's got a voice, he's got this personality, and you're aware you're playing as him, and he's got a history, and he's obviously in debt with some very dangerous people who want him to do this job for them, and he's got to go to Columbia to do it. And it was immersive. It had that classic Bioshock immersion to it, in the way that Bioshock 2, I think, perhaps lacked. Is it fair to say that? I think probably it is.
I would agree with that, yeah.
Bioshock 2 wasn't a bad game by any stretch. It just, when you think back to Bioshock, you think of Bioshock 1. You don't think of Bioshock 2.
Yeah, it was kind of a throw-in.
Yeah.
But that's actually a question I was going to say now. Obviously, you mentioned how it has a couple of throwbacks to the original Bioshock with the lighthouse scene and all that. But how does it compare to the first one? I mean, is it a big departure from what you would expect from the series in terms of gameplay and storytelling, or are they kind of
It is
reinventing?
a it is a
Are they sticking similar to what you had in the first?
it is a departure from what they had in BioShock, gameplay wise. I'd say
Yeah.
the gameplay is far more action oriented. There's less of the creepiness, if you like, of the setting, because Rapture was pretty much in ruins when we found it,
Yeah.
and as a consequence, we were soaked with this heady atmosphere of danger and, you know, suspense, and watching these dreams that had come crashing down amongst this libertarian society. And you had these creepy guys running around in masks who were chasing you and who were generally scaring the shit out of you because they had this habit of doing things like turning the lights off and then running around and you could hear them. And that wasn't what the gameplay was comprised of in BioShock Infinite. It was a lot more crowded for a start. You had these scenes where you were mixing with the populace of Columbia on a very general basis, and they were
Okay.
and the city itself. It was a fully functioning and still very much intact city, and
Yeah.
you still had social structure. There was a police force. There was various people who were working jobs, and they had you could see how it all worked in a very basic sense. So you enter this society and it's still functional. That's a major departure. You aren't alone a lot of the time.
Yeah.
So whether you're mingling with the populace or fighting against them, which you eventually do, I mean, spoiler. For anyone
You
who
fight the
thinks
people
that
in,
this
in
game
Colombia.
is, for anyone who thinks that this game is just sort of running around meeting people and being nice to them, it's definitely a departure in that you've got far more enemies and they are much more tightly organized. The original BioShock, all the splicers that you fought against, they were very disorganized, almost gang-like. They had their territories. You had those ones, the Houdini splicers, that disappeared and then reappeared, and they were all forming part of this weird cult that they had. And BioShock Infinite doesn't have that. BioShock Infinite's enemies are tightly organized, they are more than capable of operating by themselves, and they have this very wave-like approach to you. So they have these different classes of enemies from light to heavy that will herd you in one direction or another, and that they know how to make your life difficult. That's basically the key factor there, and the gameplay as a result becomes a lot more challenging. I started on normal mode, and you know how in the original BioShock you could play through on normal and it would pretty much be fine. You could go through that and you would die throughout the game maybe less than 10 times, if you were an average player. In this BioShock, you will find you die quite a bit more often than 10 times, throughout the first couple of hours, because the fastness, the rapidity of the combat is so much more intense, and the enemies
But
are much more damaging.
there's a possibility for survivability now, I presume. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not like it's kind of just it's mandatory action now. I'm sure there's like different approaches you can take when you're more experienced with it and everything like that.
Yeah, sure, you can use different sorts of tactics and things, but I mean the emphasis is still very much on using this combination of guns and plasmids, Vigors they're called in BioShock Infinite, but yeah. But the key factor I think of BioShock is, does it have the atmosphere of this world that you believed could be real? Yes, it does. It does have
Brilliant,
that.
yeah.
So I think that's what a lot of us were worried about, and it's got it. It's got it in spades. And something I'm quite pleased about actually is it doesn't have multiplayer.
That is good now.
Purely single player game. Brilliant.
So all the focus is on the development of the single player, which is what people really want from a Shock game, basically.
Yep. Absolutely.
You're doing a great job of answering all my questions before I even asked them here. It's one thing I wanted to ask was, how was the balance between the action and the story now? Because you mentioned there is quite a lot more action than there was compared to the first BioShock, and presumably the pace is going to be a bit more quicker. But I mean, do you get moments to really develop the characters and
you
good
definitely.
cutscene time and all that?
Yeah, you definitely get those moments. There's a great deal of suspense woven into things because your character is how can I put this? He's a known quantity from the perspective of the game's enemy. You aren't anonymous. You are known to the people who want to kill you. and so when you're sort of moving about through the general populace of Colombia, who have no idea who you are, you're very aware of the fact that at any moment they can notice who you are and then turn on
Yeah.
you.
So yeah, it brings kind of a tense atmosphere as well.
It's a very tense atmosphere, and the best way to describe it is Andrew Ryan's Rapture was an extreme form of liberalism.
Okay.
So it was come here and you can study whatever science you want and you can be whatever you want, and it doesn't matter what color you are. We can change your color with genetics, and we can do this, that, and the other.
Ah, yes. Whereas Bioshock is the complete opposite end of the spectrum, where they're really seclusive.
Seclusive, hardline conservatism, and it scared the fuck out of me. If I'm being
That's good. Yeah. But no, if it's conveying feelings to you and it has a real kind of, it leaves a lasting impression, it's definitely a promising sign.
Yeah, definitely it leaves a lasting impression, and the new enemies that they've put in there, they definitely measure up to the big daddies. I'll say that.
This was one of the questions I had. I was very interested in now, because obviously you got the small basic enemies that you'd be going through, but they had a little video they did up online about the specific class of enemies, which are the heavies. And there's been about 4 types. The handyman now I was really interested in. Which in particular, did you see any in your time playing?
I did see them, but I didn't get to fight any. Because I mean, I got to fight one, but that was the fight at which I was cut off. So the game faded to black when this enemy came out of the woodwork. But I got to see them through cutscenes and tangle with them through cutscenes. So that they do have a presence, definitely, and you don't really look forward to having to fight one, especially not when it's being backed up by however many of the little guys or the medium little guys or even the heavy little guys, because there are sort of variants of enemies that are tanky.
That's good. So it's kind of taken cues from Bioshock 2, where they introduce more than the general splicer. Now, I know in Bioshock 1 you had the Houdinis and that, but you had different sizes in Bioshock 2 with different kind of gameplay mechanics.
Yeah, you had the big guys. I've forgotten what they're called. Yeah, you had the big boys who would charge and throw stuff at you.
So
they weren't too challenging, I've got to be honest. They weren't too challenging in the original Bioshock 2. And the ones in here, they're...
it looks like they're taking some of the best elements now in terms of gameplay from the previous 2.
Yeah, they can get on top of you. That's the important bit. They can have an impact on how the battlefield is controlled. So that was what they were trying to do, and that's what they succeeded in doing with Bioshock Infinite. Definitely.
And you briefly mentioned figures, which would effectively be the new plasmids. Did you get an experience with any of these, or like much of an idea how they work?
Yes, I did. I did get an experience with these, and it showed the enemies using them in some really disturbing and horrific ways. I will never look at crows the same way again, I think.
Some of them look unbelievable. I've seen some really, really crazy designs.
Yes. Well, we were talking about a company that made a game where you could shoot bees out of your hands. Sorry, what did you want? There was always going to be some kind of crazy notion behind the powers that were in this game, and if anything, I think they have this streamlining effect on the gameplay. So you have the classic fire and lightning plasmids, and you have the ones that can do all sorts of things like control certain types of enemies or whatever. But you also have stuff that can be massively beneficial in terms of it distracts foes while you finish off others. And it's a little bit hard to describe, but I suppose it's a case of if you didn't have powers in this Bioshock, then you would not survive, and I mean you would not survive more than about 5 seconds. It's that reliant on the system. The original Bioshock, you could more or less get away with just using guns. I did try that.
They felt like enhancements more than a mandatory part of what you need to be doing.
Absolutely. In this game, you do need powers. You will die without powers. I guarantee it.
One thing I noticed about the figures now, what they were doing with Infinite. Now this could be more of a CG thing, but in the trailers, it looked like they had a real more, or at least a better aesthetic focus on some of these abilities, like with the fire plasmids and stuff, like on his hands. They looked really, really impressive. Would you say the same exists in actual gameplay?
Oh yeah, I'd go with that. I mean,
Yeah.
it's still got this sort of graphic novel brushstroke element to the character models and the graphics, which I like.
Yeah.
If I'm not even sure if that's an accurate description, but you know what I mean. It's got this sort of artsy kind of look to it.
Yeah, so it's not grounded
ultra,
completely in
Yeah,
reality.
it's not ultra realism graphics we're talking about. It's a more refined sort of graphic novel sort of approach.
Well, it's good because it gives the opportunity to present more
Yeah.
outlandish type of designs and more
and
concepts thrown in.
I would say that the most striking vigor I used was the Murder by Crows one, the one with
Murder
all
of the Crows, yeah.
Without that's going to be the classic for BioShock Infinite, the Murder by Crows. I'm calling it now. I'm going to say that will be the vigor. That will be the vigor everyone will remember. Not least because of the way in which you can use it and the way enemies use it as well. You know,
so, would you say this is now on par with what you should expect from BioShock? The first is this as monumentous, so to speak, as the release of BioShock 1 is?
No, I wouldn't.
No.
BioShock we loved because it harkened back to a time when you could carry 12 guns seemingly without being hampered and running around, and you had this approach to using powers in the environment and being in this underwater city. Columbia is strikingly beautiful. You can't deny.
Yeah.
But it isn't Rapture, if that makes sense. Yeah, nothing will be able to will be able to negate what we saw when we saw Rapture for the first time.
Yeah.
I love Columbia. Let me be clear. BioShock Infinite is a brilliant looking game. I will remember it. I will probably list it as a classic, just going by what I've played so far.
Okay.
I can't say that it will either surpass or reset the scale on what we come to expect from a BioShock game. I think that it maintains very well in its own way, and it's something that will definitely need to be continued in the same vein, because the atmosphere and the characters, the dialogue and the spoken dialogue, by the way, the voice actors are top notch. They've still got top notch voice actors for this.
Brilliant.
And you still have the audio diaries, and you still have these encounters with this antagonist on screen, I think. But you can't really say, this is going to reset the scale, or this is going to make things better than they were. It doesn't make things better. It keeps the standard high. I'll say that.
Yeah.
That's the best
Keeps
way.
It close to what you would expect.
Yeah, absolutely. It's along those lines.
I'm definitely looking forward to seeing that when it's released. So,
can we talk about Devil May Cry?
Yes.
Do we really want to?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Why do you think it's such a bad game?
Okay, things I expect from a game. Primarily, gameplay. Good gameplay now, not just gameplay in general. I think this has gone and lost some of the ideas that the Devil May Cry series held. And presumably when they took up the name and wanted to reboot the series, what they would want to do is, take some of the features that already existed, the good features, improve on them, and maybe change the style, theme, and setting of it. From what I've seen, Devil May Cry was always known for really unforgiving gameplay. You know, people always quote Dante Must Die difficulty as the hardest difficulty. And it had a lot of depth to its combat system from what I had seen. And I had seen that the newest Devil May Cry reboot had gone and added a lot more simplicity to the combat system. Now, I don't see any reason to remove a skill ceiling. You know, I mean, sure, there's possibility for adding in assists to certain players, but you shouldn't butcher the idea that there can be a higher skill ceiling for other players in the process of making it accessible to a wider audience. Additionally, my only other major complaint with regards to DMC is not the writing specifically, but just the way they designed Dante. Now, we did talk about this previously as to why he is the way he is, but I think what they've done is they've moved too far towards, not just in the character, but in the settings that they have in the game. They've moved too far towards this teen power fantasy that makes the game seem like it was written by a fucking 15-year-old sometimes. But yeah, between the simplification of gameplay and the way some of the characters and ideas are presented, they would be my biggest gripes with the game. Now, outside of that, I am really impressed by the environment design that they've put in. Now, that's one thing I really loved about it. It was similar to Enslaved. What they did was they took a post-apocalyptic setting and made it look like really beautiful in some cases. So I do trust Ninja Theory to make some great environments, and I absolutely loved what they did in DMC. Even some of the soundtrack was very impressive, and yeah. So
I don't remember it purely because every time it came on, I tried to stick my fingers in my ear far enough that it would, make me deaf.
But it's so coming from one side of the opinions that are held on the new Devil May Cry game. As I said, primarily the two problems are with how Capcom and Ninja Theory are treating the idea of the new Dante and how the gameplay is presenting itself.
Well, you see, I played the originals, so I count myself as a fan of the series as a whole, the franchise, and I won't defend your points about the gameplay. I do think they watered down the combat in Devil May Cry. This new shit. What are we gonna call it? DMC.
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 Fucking stupid title. The combat was simplified. At the same time, I can think, well, the combat was simplified in this game, but in a sequel, maybe it'll be better. I'm not going to say that I hated the combat. It was sugar rush combat. It was combat that was fueled by your ever-pressing need to keep that triple S rank high and clear, which was much trickier, I would say, on Dante Must Die. I would say it's trickier on that. On Son of Sparda, it was relatively easy if you knew how the enemies moved to sort yourself out and keep that S rank high. But in terms of the character, I don't have a problem with how they redesigned Dante. And I don't view him as a teenager. Teenagers do not do what Dante was doing in this game. Or at least the ones that I know don't do it. It's it was a very adult opening, and it was a very adult sort of continuation, because I think now that I'm not going to get all analytical and bullshitty in this podcast, but I will say that I think that they nailed something about how Dante would be if he'd had the kind of life that he had in this game. I think there was more consistency there. The Dante that we knew and loved in the first 3 Devil May Cry games was pretty much happy-go-lucky, regardless of the fact that his father was a 2,000-year-old demon and his mother was murdered when he was a child, and his existence made very little sense at all, really, when I think, well, the demon was locked away 2,000 years ago. So is he 2,000 years old? Or what happened there? I still get lost about the fine details of that plot and what was going on. So I find refuge in the combat of the first 4 games, excuse me. I don't count Devil May Cry 4 anymore. fucking scarred me for life. The way that they did the story in DMC was a hell of a lot more consistent. I liked the over-the-top bankers are evil, news reporters are evil. This guy that those boss battles you had as well. They were so clever. They were so cleverly done. I love that battle with the newsreader.
Where you're kind of inside the news.
Yeah, that was inspired stuff. You got to hand it to them for that. But I guess the overall point is I didn't mind Dante's redesign. I didn't love it. I just liked it. I liked the guy, and I liked his apathy, I think, overall towards everything, and I liked his brother as well. I liked Virgil. I liked the way that they redid him, because his character was much more interesting than this stoic, silent bloke who was stood on top of a tower with a samurai sword waiting for Dante to reach him. And I don't know, I mean, there was plenty of stuff that I thought, yeah, they could improve upon that, but I think that overall I would be more than happy to see Ninja Theory make another one and, up the ante with the gameplay. And I also think that this makes a valid case for Capcom to say, do you know what? We fucked up Resident Evil now. Can you redo that as well, please?
Well, speaking of which, it has been said that depending on the sales of Revelations, I think that's the next one that's coming out, whichever one it is anyways, there has been talk of getting a remake, start from the scratch.
And it's about fucking time. Because
do you really think they can do it?
Yes, because they've got to make it back about the survival. I mean, come on, look at what we've got. That DayZ has rocketed up to the very top of gaming time space because gaming time taken by people, because it's pure survivalist against zombies. I mean, that's what we love. The Walking Dead. Okay, again. That shot up to the top. Not quite for the same reasons. It was sort of an interactive film kind of thing, and it was great because of that. But still, it wasn't action-oriented gameplay. Do you know what I mean? It had this
it followed the themes of what people
want. It had
want.
this real sense of tension. That is what Resident Evil is crucially missing, and it has been missing it ever since Resident Evil 5. I'm sorry, but I know that Resident Evil 4 is regarded by a lot of people as being the high point of the series, but I just don't buy it at all. I think Code Veronica was sort of the last real sort of heavy survival piece of the Resident Evil franchise, and after that it kind of veered towards the action scenarios. And please, for fuck's sake, never talk about Operation Raccoon City. It should be obliterated from gaming history and just forgotten about. And anyone found playing it should be tied to a post in a desert and set upon with ants.
Informed of their bad taste.
Well, fuck. I mean, you have to set an example. Sometimes you just have to set a goddamn example. And anyone found playing that game without just cause, i.e., if you were reviewing it, you have to go. I'm sorry.
You're a bad person, and you should know about it.
You are a bad person. You should know about it.
With regards to this possible Resident Evil reboot, this could go the way of what Ninja Theory didn't do and would have benefited well from, is if they avoid... Now, because if you make a game that's based around another or is a reboot of another, people are going to pick up on it. They're going to know what it's based off of. But if you avoid putting the title up there, people have all these preconceived notions if it has a title, the way DMC did. People wanted what they saw in the previous games. And you have these really adamant fans who will, criticize it at any turn, and will have they'll criticize it simply because it's not what the previous one was.
That doesn't strike you as being irrational, though. I mean,
it's completely irrational. That's the point. If Capcom were to make this reboot by a different name, I think it might actually work out better for them.
Now, you see, I kind of disagree with that on principle, because if you're going to do something based on a few irrational fans who are getting their knickers in a twist, then, sorry, you don't deserve to be a developer, and I will back away.
But is it really a few irrational fans?
I think it is a few irrational fans. I think genuinely a lot of people who posted negative comments on the internet and who, sort of did their fair bit of whatever you want to call it, trolling. Yeah, trolling. Fuck it, I don't know what I'm saying. Yes, whatever. um, anyone who was doing that stuff, I think if they did pick up the game, and they were just in the mood to play it, they were just in the mood to sort of see, okay, fine, let's see what it is. I genuinely think few people who pick up a game and who kind of are not really into the idea of playing it, I think that once they actually start playing it, the preconceptions gradually start to be eroded and then are disbanded, and gradually that sort of softens into acceptance of, yes, okay, I see what you were trying to do with this direction. I might not like it as much as the originals, but I can see what you're trying to do, and I kind of like it for what it is. I think the fans of the original games would play or have played DMC, and if they haven't, fuck it, it's their loss. You know that it's a new franchise. It's not a new franchise. It's a new direction for things to go in, and regardless of what you say, I'm sorry, I just can't see how Devil May Cry 4 was a worthy addition to things like Devil May Cry 3. It had great combat when there was actual combat in it, but a lot of it, to me, Devil May Cry 4, I spent more time skipping cutscenes in that game than I did playing against the enemies.
No, I agree with you there. I mean, I've played all the Devil May Cry as well, and no, 4 wasn't any good. I haven't played the new one yet. I have on my PC ready to go, but from what I've seen, I like it. I don't see what's so bad about it that people get so butthurt.
Yeah, and I mean, if you were locked in a room and you had to choose, gun to your head, you had to choose what game to play for 48 hours straight between DMC and Devil May Cry 4, what would you go with?
DMC, that's not even
Do I have to
hard.
beat it?
Huh?
Because I mean, I presume for Devil May Cry 4 is pretty difficult.
It's not even about the difficulty, it's the overall feel of the game, and to me, Devil May Cry 4 was not on par with what the Devil May Cry series was about, and people said it at the time. People agreed. The Devil May Cry fans agreed. The fact that in this DMC, Dante happens to be redesigned and the setting happens to have been redesigned, but it is basically the same thing. You know, guy whose father was a demon goes around and saves the world and slices people apart, or demons apart. That's basically the same story, and if you're just going to decry a game based on the fact that they slightly changed one particular, if just because they slightly changed the setting, not because of the way the gameplay is just so goddamn brilliant, then sorry, I fail to see the logic in your perspective. But by all means, go ahead. It's their money; they can spend it how they want. But it's a damn shame if they don't give DMC a chance, because just speaking as someone who's open to seeing what people do with things when they're new, yeah, I'm up for that. And I was up for it when they switched Panzer Dragoon to Panzer Dragoon Saga. It was a JRPG when it was a shooter. They switched it from being a shooter to a JRPG, and many of us just went with it and were greatly rewarded for it. So why shouldn't we be for DMC and for future games as well? Resident Evil, I'd love it if they went back to the basics and looked at new ways to make things tense and survival heavy and really sort of just generally violent in a way that was startling and not so much for shock value.
I would say I'd say the biggest criticism I have at the moment with DMC is, yes, it's meant to be a new direction, new character, well, new main character. Why would you put in DLC of the previous character?
This is what I don't get. You have this infamous moment in DMC in which a shop explodes, and it's like a wig shop or something, and the hair, or Dante's previous style of hair, a wig of it, lands on new Dante's head. He looks in a mirror for about 5 seconds and says, "Not in a million years." No, not in a million years. As a matter of fact, about 3 days. 3 days after the game's released, they make out this DLC to make him look almost identical to the old Dante. So, it makes them look like they're shitting all over fans with this scene. They're saying, "Screw you, previous fans."
And I kind of went with them on that one. I know that I'm in a minority, and I can't. I did think, well, that's really going to go down well with the people who are against your remake. But another part of me, kind of the sort of more masochistic and playful part of me, thinks, yeah, okay, you know what? I understand completely, because these guys were doing their job. They were told, they were given the project by Capcom. Capcom said, "Here, go and see what you can do with this," and they were doing it. And all the while, they were just getting all this random hatred from people. So I'm not saying that the scene shouldn't be in there. I'm just saying that the fans, if they're going to give all this shit to a developer, they have to expect some kind of reaction. And, like what happened with BioWare and Mass Effect 3, they had to expect some kind of reaction for that game. And they got one.
But it's a wonder what their stance on it is. I mean, if they're gonna respond to criticism, what is it they're doing with adding in this DLC that kind of completely changes how Dante looks? Are they trying to rope in some of the old fans with that?
I think in both instances they're essentially saying, really, does it make a difference? If people want to pay extra to sort of play as a different looking character, and I kind of have to think that they're slightly retarded, but it's entirely their choice. I mean, and I can sympathise with the developer's perspective on this. I'm sorry. I know that I'm kind of playing devil's advocate here by siding with Ninja Theory, but you have to remember that behind the name Ninja Theory there are people who take a great deal of pride in their work, and people who do a lot of work to give us stuff that we don't need but want. And the response that they got for their efforts, a lot of it, you have to remember, positive feedback in this business. A lot of people won't give positive feedback. They'll give negative feedback at the drop of a hat, but they'll rarely say, yes, we love what you're doing, keep doing that.
When you think of them as people in regards their ability to take criticism, you have to remember that they consciously decided to take it in the design in a certain direction. Despite what fans said, there were previous outcries when the initial trailer was announced. Dante actually looked quite different back then, but he still had a complete redesign. So, to me, basically, the guy who was behind most of the direction of the game, he was the one who said he continued with the idea, So, if you're not expecting criticism after, not ignoring, but not taking into huge consideration what these fans wanted, and moving with a complete redesign, I mean, that kind of stuff has to be expected,
Oh, sure. It has to be expected, but, I mean, that's not to say that people have the right to just go on and just vent unnecessary amounts of hateful remarks and comments specifically directed at people. I mean, that's just being unreasonable. And they get to do it anonymously as well. Good for them.
Yeah.
I appreciate the fact that if I work as a train driver in London and I'm told to wait for a signal to change, that my passengers aren't going to be too happy with me, and they will blame me. If these people were hooked up to the internet and I was hooked up into the internet, I guarantee, as the train driver, I would get a torrent of hateful remarks from all these random passengers who would be anonymous. And, they were just like, you dozy cunt, why aren't you moving? I've got to get blah, blah, blah. Pure selfishness, and that to me is just unreasonable. I'm all for people giving constructive feedback to developers and to publishers. I've given my fair share in my time. But when you get down to just being purely hateful, that's the point at which I stop supporting you as a gamer and someone who pays for games, someone who, wants to have my cake and eat it. There has to be a point at which we say, no, that is not reasonable. And to me, the sort of saying stuff like the fans of Devil May Cry, the originals, have been saying to Ninja Theory, I think some of that stuff definitely need not have been entered into the debate at all.
The way it is when it comes to criticism with games, it's unfortunate that when it's being criticized, whether it's legitimate or not, that the people who are heard are obviously the loudest. People who bring up constructive criticism, which may inherently be bad, or negative, they generally don't get heard as much as these people who are just shouting.
Well, you say that, but
abuse
then they
and vulgar.
redesigned Dante from the way he was shown in the trailers initially. So you know,
And it's a wonder is if that's if that's fan response. Like the way it was with Metacritic was the
well,
fact
that was
that.
stupid. That was just pure stupidity, wasn't
But
it?
would you say that wasn't completely down to people who were trolling or people who just wanted to get a response or something like that? But there's a chance that people who were putting up reviews legitimately felt it deserved that score.
I can't say I believe that because
No.
as someone who writes game reviews and someone who's written for a couple of years now, I mean, you can criticize a game, sure. There's no reason why you can't rip a game to pieces. I ripped 007 Legends to pieces when it came out. But you need to say why. You can't just say, I don't like it.
Yeah.
And that's essentially what people were saying on Metacritic. I don't like it.
Yeah.
I don't like it, and that's why. And fair enough, you don't like it, but you're giving actual feedback on a site that is regarded as being a hub for critical consensus. And you are impacting the way people see this game as either a success or failure just by your individual actions. Sorry, no. It's completely out of order.
Yeah, I know. There's a lot of bias that follows being able to review without any, without being able to be held up on what you've said and actually being asked to back up your claims or anything like that. When you're free to review at your own discretion, people will generally review a lot lower. But if you judge this game in its own merit, outside of what it has done to the series or how it's changed from the series, if you don't review it in a biased manner, you can see how the game works. That it does work as a good game in its own right.
It's a
even
very
though
good game. It's
Mm.
I mean, overall, I would say DMC is a very good game. It's a hell of a lot more polished than a lot of games that we see. It's
Yeah, but if you're
received
given something like 40%, that's in a much lower bracket than this game, than the standards that this game is given.
Yes. Well, sorry, wait a second. What did you say?
Well, the user score was something like 4.3,
Right.
and if you were giving 4.3 to something, you would expect it to be almost unplayable in a lot
Oh,
of
yeah,
cases.
yeah, absolutely. So that's just bullshit.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, if you look at Two Worlds on Metacritic, I bet that has a higher score than DMC, and that is not at all justified.
No.
I mean, anyone who's played Two Worlds, if you're out there, my condolences. There are therapy sessions that are on every Thursday at St Martha's, but the overall point I'm making here is that as professionals, certainly in the professional circles, you are held to account for what you say. You have a name, you have work locations, you have an office. And if you say that a game is shit without giving some pretty damn justifiable facts about it, then you're not going to last long. And the only reason that these morons gave DMC the reviews they did is because they could get away with it. Like anyone who says something negative for the sake of saying something negative. And it just pissed me off. A lot of what happened, it's actually comparable, I think, to BioWare's problems with Mass Effect 3. I was one of the people who disliked the endings, or the ending, whatever you want to call it, for Mass Effect 3. I went online, I engaged in some discussions with people about it. I talked about how I felt about the ending and why I thought it was just, sort of whatever, wrong, or why I didn't like it. I didn't expect BioWare to amend this or to elaborate upon it. They published the game, they'd done what they were supposed to do. I still wasn't too happy about it, but I wasn't sort of holding them to the wall for it. But some of the stuff other people were coming up with, other fans of the Mass Effect games, was just unconstructive and hateful and stupid.
Yeah,
and
it was the Mass Effect idea that brought to light this idea of entitlement.
Yes,
and that is the question of what are you entitled to?
Well, entitlement.
When you pay for a game.
Christ, entitlement. The other sticky issue of entitlement. No one was entitled to a renewed Mass Effect 3 ending. I just think that by their history, BioWare are one of the developers that really do pay attention. I mean, they really pay attention to fan feedback. They have their own social network, for Christ's sakes. It's
Yeah.
very active. It's always been very active. So I think this is more a sense of fans knew that if they asked, as if many of them asked as possible, then BioWare would try to do something with their requests. And that's coming from the constructive side of it. So I don't think that's so much about entitlement. I think they knew BioWare. They knew that BioWare would listen to feedback, and they gave them feedback. I don't know what they expected BioWare to do with it. I didn't really know what BioWare would do with it. I kind of hoped to myself, well, they might do something. And lo and behold, they did. And I think the results of that were very, very good. I actually can play Mass Effect 3 now and think, yeah, this is still an excellent game. I still thought it was an excellent game, by the way, with the endings it had before. It was only just the final note. It was like, you'd had a great meal and then someone had taken a dump on your dessert and you unknowingly had eaten it. The end result of that process, I thought was great. I thought it was great that BioWare had done what they did. And that was all very well and good, but I still kind of felt resented. I still felt resentful towards the fans who had just been out and out negative about everything and continued to be negative after BioWare had released the extended cut. And that's exactly what's gone on with DMC. The fans have sort of just been negative and negative and negative and negative, and the games come out, they haven't played it. They're still being negative completely about everything. There are people who just watch clips or who just watch
form their opinion there and then.
Base it on what they see, purely on what they see.
Yeah.
And I will just say this, I can appreciate when a game's in a developmental stage and you see something you don't like, you speak up, fine. I don't like this. They did that with Dante and DMC, and they changed him. Great. Not necessarily something people wanted, but let's face it, it was a fuck of a lot better than the way he looked. After people have done things, after they've put the time and the effort to change things in there for you, because you opened your mouth and you said, I feel this way about it, and then you don't play it, you don't do anything with it, what the fuck is the point in you even saying anything in the first place?
Yeah.
Just keep quiet.
Yeah, I mean, like, if you were criticizing it now, I mean, I can understand that you'd be upset about what they're doing with it, but do you really feel that if you criticize it, they're going to completely rehaul everything that they were working on from the beginning,
And they shouldn't. DMC is a great game if you haven't played it and you kind of feel indifferent towards this discussion because you haven't played it. Well, just pick it up, have a bash, see what you think. Especially if you're a fan of the previous games, because it does hold up, I think, to the other games. Not in the same way that they hold up to each other, but they're comparable. They're good. And if you haven't played a Devil May Cry game before, then it's also worth playing just to see how good combat and a good sort of entertaining little story can really gel things together and make a good sort of 8-hour or so experience, 7 hours, however long it was.
But if you are a DMC fan, try it as a game on its own. Don't look at it as a Devil May Cry game, because that could potentially, I don't know, sour your opinion of it.
Yeah, definitely. It's one of those things. Stephen's been very quiet throughout all of this.
I've just been sitting back enjoying this. Trust me, it's been so nice not to talk.
If it's good to listen to. So I suppose that about covers what we had to talk about today.
Yeah, I think we should just round up with one quick question now. We got 2 questions in on the Mature Gaming Twitter, which you can go and follow at twitter.com/maturegaming. And I think we should answer one of them now, because to be honest with you, the other one would be a great topic to discuss on a different podcast, just due to how long of an answer it could be.
Okay.
So for this one, we're going to answer from Red UK. Are we looking forward to Grid 2?
I
believe Alaric is, yeah.
I am. I played it as a Eurogamer. I interviewed Codemasters about it. It was a good interview, and they were very They were very upfront about the fact that it's still very much a work in progress. Well, it was at the time that they... When the hell was Eurogamer? Was it in August? Was it in September? I don't know. I can't remember. They were very much upfront about it, the fact that it was still a work in progress and they had a lot of things to add still. But the stuff that I played, my God, I don't know how they managed... how they managed to squeeze that much of a car's handling and genuine feel into a controller. I don't know how they did it. It was brilliant. And the original Grid had a bit of a reputation for managing to do that, managing to achieve that with different cars and different car types and different tracks and different everything. And you really do sort of feel like you're in control of this vehicle from the get-go, and there's such a skill element to it. I was very impressed at the time. If they've kept that, I'm sure they have. There's no reason they would have dropped the ball. Then it's set to be the racing game of 2013.
Wow, big words. Personally, I didn't even know Grid was coming out before now, and I played the first
Call
the
yourself
demo
a
for the first
fucking
one.
journalist, Jesus Christ.
Because I haven't played a racing game. But yeah, I don't know. From what Alaric describes, it sounds like it has a lot of potential, and I am interested in more simulator type aspect racing games in a lot of cases. So yeah, I would definitely like to get look up a bit more on it.
Yep, no, same here. I'm looking forward to it. Should be good. Looks really nice.
Looks really nice.
I want to touch it.
Hey, if it has bright colours, it has me.
Oh, for fuck's sake. Can't you elaborate, Stephen, please?
Blur is your game. Blur has a lot of colors and shit.
Yeah, come on,
Right.
we've got 5 subscribers here who are desperate to hear your opinion.
Right.
Speak.
I really like it.
But you haven't played it nor seen anything on it.
Subscribe to our channel for more people, please.
Yes, please. For more
For
me
more
making a tit of myself.
unopinionated podcasters.
No, from what I've seen, like trailers and whatnot, no, I like the look of it. I like the controls, how they look. I can't talk about racing games in depth because to me it's just very, all right, it controls like this, it looks like that. I don't,
You've got to learn how to use your adjectives, Stephen. It's one of those things.
Yeah, pretty much. I'm retarded when it comes to the English language, and this is the best you're gonna get on me.
Just picture the game. Feel it. Put it into your head and
Picture the game. Pretty. Yes. Trust
well,
me.
that's all for the MG podcast episode 3, folks.
Now I'm just doing it to wind up Jake.
Out of pure interest, what is the other question? I genuinely want to know. I think a lot of people listening to this will want to know what to look forward to for next episode.
Yeah, this was fairly brief.
Basically, HD reboots, are they a good thing or not?
Oh shit! Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll save that.
That's why it's getting
no. I mean,
saved.
yes. That's.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say yes
Ask
or no right now.
ask more of this person. Ask him to send in more questions.
Please
It was
do.
Gary. It was Gary.
Oh.
Was it Gary?
Yes, it was Gary. Yeah. The guy that smells a piss and dresses funny.
God.
I said that last time
How can I answer that and not sound guilty?
by agreeing.
I suppose. Why not? Let's go.
You
with
met
that.
the guy.
I'm just going to slowly back out of this conversation now.
And with that,
Don't worry,
that's
we
the
won't
end.
discuss it any further.
Yep. No. So we will save that topic till next week, and I don't mean how
Which
Gary
one?
smells.
Oh, Christ.
Oh well. Hopefully I'll be around for it. Hopefully.
Yeah. No,
Would
it's
be
been
nice.
fun.
Would be nice. It's been fun being here.
Thank you for coming on.
Oh, no problem.
Are we fucking doing this right now, or is this just...
Yeah.
Oh,
No,
this
this was just gonna do casual.
Yeah. That's
Okay.
Yeah.
Get with the
What a
picture,
podcast
man.
does.
I'm just wondering how much of this is going to be edited out, because obviously this bit's going to have to be edited out.
Well, I wasn't gonna edit any of it out. Now you've ruined it, you cock.
Have fun, dickhead.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Great big veiny erections, the pair of you.
Love it. You love it. All right, guys. Thanks for listening, and as always, see you next time.
It's been fun.